Okay. It's August 15th, the Lowell Light and Power Board meeting. I will call it to order. And Charlie, can you do a roll call?
All right, Chairperson Beecham.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Bonger.
Here.
Member Cadwalder.
Here.
Member Straubin.
Here.
And let the record reflect that Board Member Crawford is absent, and he did call me ahead of time to let me know that he had something come up.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve Daniel's absence.
So moved. I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Approval of the agenda. I want to add, and it's not really an action item, it's more informational, but where would you like to add it? I don't,
So let's do it in action item.
Okay.
I think it makes
D.
sense to, we'll call it D, but it's really a discussion.
it's a discussion that I talked to Charlie that I want to enter into, just informational, and it has to do, it's because of the fires that have happened out in Maui, out in Hawaii, and you're gonna go, what the heck does that have to do with us? Well, you'll see where I'm coming from when we get there. So with that change, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve the amended agenda with item D.
Supported. Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Approval of the minutes from the July 11th, 2023 regular board meeting.
I'd like to motion to approve the July meeting.
Okay.
Charlie, can you select your screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's on me.
Okay, it's been moved and supported to approve the minutes of the July 11th, 2023 meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment. Well, we really don't have any outside public here. Only employees and liaison from the city council. So with that, I would move on to action items. And I'll let Charlie take over with the employee handbook modifications.
All right, so there's nothing earth-shattering here. There's a bunch of things kind of rolled up into one action item, starting with when our HR specialist decided to retire. We thought it would be a good time to do a little more of a thorough review and bring in some outside assistance evaluating what changes need to happen in the handbook just to really stay compliant with changing laws and anything like that. Things change. So there are 3 sections to the additional handout. The first one, I'll go through a few of them. Section 1 is HR Collaborative Review. That's a company that we work with. They're a Grand Rapids-based company, or they had people locally to Grand Rapids. I'll be honest, I don't know how big a company they are, but everybody we dealt with was local to Grand Rapids. We worked with them for a couple months, kind of on and off. Julie led the charge with that, and we just kind of went through and did a HR compliance evaluation. How do we do our record keeping? Are we up to date with everything that's changed in HR world? So we went through more practices and got updated, and then we looked at the handbook and said, does the handbook contain anything that has since become illegal, or are we missing things that are requirements, or what are best practices? We took the opportunity to work with somebody outside, so we have a broader perspective than just what we see here. Again, nothing super earth-shattering included, mostly just requirements. Civil Air Patrol leave. It's not like we have anybody in the Civil Air Patrol, but it's one of the things that I don't know, to be honest, I don't remember if that was best practice or just one of these groups that have carved out special rights based on the service that they provide. You know, there's military leave, there's different services that are entitled to be able to perform those civic duties. Civil Air Patrol lactation accommodation. This is one that I was aware of as a requirement, so we wanted to make sure we got this in there in practice. We have always adhered to this. We've had some need for this in staff in recent years, and we provided some options. It's something that's important, it's the right thing to do, but this is the legal side of things to make sure we need to. Again, witness leave, crime victim leave, kind of same boat or just good practice. The voting leave is not a requirement, but it's something that I've always done, since I've been in a position to be able to. I always have encouraged employees to take some time out of their day and go vote. What I, in practice, have done is provide everybody with 30 minutes. Can't help you go, if you live 2 counties over, you live in Kalamazoo, I can't give you a half a day to drive to Kalamazoo and vote, but it's also easier to vote absentee, but I think it's important to give people the opportunity to vote. Because most of the time the lines are much more advantageous if you're going to wait in line during the day, during random hours, not at lunch, not when everybody else does.
Yeah, and that half hour, even if somebody is further afield, that does just help them pad their time a little
Yes.
bit.
Yeah, and it's not if you can't get it done in a half hour, you don't get to. This is what we can offer. It's fair to everybody.
Yep.
And then the last one is just the last one here is an update to the revision piece of the employee handbook, just saying that the process that we can insurance, different reasons that we need to amend it. And then the last recommendation was an update to the employee handbook acknowledgement. And that's just a more thorough version of a sign-off. So nothing that really changes much in practice. It's just a more of a compliance update in this section. Section 2, I guess I'll stop there. Any questions on anything in the first section of the proposed changes? All right. Second section, again, shouldn't be a surprise to the board. These are all the changes. And this is assuming in the past the board has desired to move any union negotiated benefit or change over to apply to all employees. So I'm making a little bit of assumption that the board would like to continue to do that, but I've not been given any reason to believe that there's a desire to do something different. So the second section is just taking the pieces of the union negotiated contract that were applicable to non-union employees and getting it in the appropriate section. Again, the first one just changes the funeral attendance leave. We updated and created better, a little more thorough language around the cash advance per diem. Again, just took the language, and then the last one is a new benefit, and that's the 1% match on the 457. So those are all, that's that section. Again, these are all things that we've discussed as part of the union negotiation. So I'm assuming there's no questions, but I will.
Yeah, I do have
Yes.
a question. I'm noticing in the old verbiage, okay, since this is an employee handbook, the old verbiage says employee/board members, okay? And I see in the new version, you've taken that out. But since board members are not employees, they shouldn't be referenced in the employee manual, I would think.
Yeah, that's some of
Have
it.
you taken care of that in other instances?
Yeah, we're taking each hand, we've not done an exhaustive review of the handbook to say, hey, where does it apply? But as it becomes, like when we did the prohibited benefits policy, because it was in the employee handbook, we moved it to governance policies.
Gotcha.
So anytime there's something like a governance policy, but really this it is applicable to board members. But it doesn't need to be in the employee handbook.
Right.
If you go to, when you went to Nashville with me for the APPA, everything's paid for. So
Right.
it applies to board members, but not in the employee handbook.
Yeah, exactly,
Yes.
so, yeah, in the governance.
Yes, it's a governance thing. It's not in that, but it's more practice at that point than
Yeah.
a policy, but we could look at that. That's probably something to look at to incorporate it.
Sorry.
That's
So, we're doing a per diem now? I mean,
It's
we did do it-
it's a per diem, or we have the flexibility as a company to decide if we're gonna do a per diem or a cash advance, depending on the circumstance.
And a per diem is their,
It's a flat dollar amount, we give
And
you
then-
the dollar, we say we get on the IRS chart and say
Right.
X number of
and
dollars.
they can use it however they feel,
Yeah, so
and they don't have to turn in receipts and all that kind of
it's just,
stuff?
but it's considered taxable income.
Right,
So there's times that it's advantageous and times that it's easier, like when, Ryan sends an apprentice to apprentice school for a week. We don't do we do a quasi cash advance. We give them a prepaid Visa card and then they have to return receipts for that. But in instances where you're not sure what is going to be provided, it gets more challenging because, to be honest, I don't think we should be giving somebody per diem for lunch if lunch is going to be provided. You know,
Right.
the whole-
Right.
So there's circumstances where you would want to go with a per diem approach to simplify things, or to, it just makes more sense. And there's times that a cash advance makes more sense. So we baked it in that the employer has the right to decide which avenue we go down. But at the end of the day, everybody's
and
expenses
and
are
I think
covered.
you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
And it's because, we've talked to some other, organizations, it's very, and it's not so inconvenient for it's when you're out at a restaurant on a conference or whatever, and somebody's having a burger and a beer for lunch or dinner. It's just, I feel sorry for the restaurant, because what our policy has been, when we do not pay for alcohol. And so therefore, they have to, everything's, oh, you gotta have that on a separate bill and this bill, and it's just, and again, I'm not saying that it's a beer fest, but having a beer with, having a beer with a burger, is not a big deal to me. And, that's where the per diem, if you're doing the per diem, then that just allows them to, it's the employee's choice of what they want to get, and you don't have to
You don't have to police it much.
police it, so.
Then, the third section is really just when we were talking about updating policy to clear up issues with the definition of a retiree hired before September 1, 2012, when we look back at the way that we had presented that definition only applied to employees hired before September 1, 2012. At the time, we had talked about, hey, let's go back and revisit retiree health care for employees hired after 2012. We looked at a lot of different funding options, and there's never a fruitful mechanism that would not have us incur significant costs now to save money at some other point. There's just not a good structure that wouldn't disrupt budgeting, so, and it's less of a financial impact for those employees because it's so much more limited in what the benefit is. So all this does is kind of move where that definition is and make it apply to all retirees, not just the specific one. In hindsight, we should have just had it apply to both, but we've kind of been holding on to it. When there was an opportunity to make some other handbook changes, we thought, let's just incorporate this one as well. So really, it's just a very minor cleanup item. But those are all the changes. I don't know if Julie has anything to add. She was very much involved with the HR collaborative piece of it, but it's definitely it's our recommendation to approve all the changes being presented and then authorize staff to update the handbooks to reflect the approval, because we've got to figure out where everything from HR collaborative needs to be baked into what sections and reformatting. So we don't have a completed proposed handbook right now, but the thought would be when all of the changes are incorporated, and should the board choose to approve them, we'll spend some time getting them into the official handbook and get that distributed to employees and updated on the website.
Okay. Anything else?
That's pretty much it for this one. I mean, it's really, like I said, there was not anything earth shattering or just more of a compliance and administrative exercise to incorporate things that you all have decided already into different locations.
So I would entertain a motion to approve the changes updating the handbook.
Motion to approve changes to the employee handbook.
And I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, we'll roll on to the MERS 457 plan agreement update. So again, this is not a surprise to the board. What's included in your board packet is the formal documentation that implements the 1% match on the 457. And now that the board has approved the changes to the non-union handbook, we can move this one because this applies to everybody. We had to go in sequential order to not get out of order. But bringing this to the board, essentially to have the board, MERS does not require the Light and Power Board to make these changes because we fall, to vote on this because we fall under the city's umbrella, and they ultimately have to, the formal documents have to be signed by the city, and the city council meeting minutes have to be submitted to MERS to make the change official. But what I'm asking for here today is I guess approval to carry this to the city council, and then also looking for a Light and Power Board formal recommendation for city council to approve the 457 agreement plan update as presented. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but this is really taking what you all have already approved and putting it on documentation and getting the formal approval across the board to implement it.
Any questions? I would entertain a motion to send the 457 plan on to city council, which then looks like would be there to get it on their August 21st city council meeting.
Okay, I motion that we do the recommended changes and approve the 457 plan agreement for city council to approve.
And support?
Well, go ahead.
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion?
Charlie, does the 1% then go to the deficit you guys have then? Would that be added to that?
No, so the 457 plan is similar to like a 401k. It's the employee and it's our match.
Okay, so it's not going into the.
It's not, yeah, this is separate from the defined benefit
Okay.
pension liability. This is just basically an additional flexibility for employees, because the base defined contribution plan, you have to make your selection and your contribution selection day one of employment, and it can never be changed.
Okay.
That's an IRS law for the structure of that retirement plan. So not everybody can max out our contribution. So this is just a tool to give additional flexibility, because with the 457, you can change whenever you want in terms of your contribution. Now, granted, our match is only up to 1% on this, but it's just kind of an extra small tool in the tool belt to help our employees plan for their retirement. So we're still managing and have a plan for our pension liability funding that's kind of over here, and this is another piece. And this would not have any impact on our liability because we self-fund this in the moment. Every payroll, or actually I think it's once a month, not every payroll. Julie makes a contribution, makes our contribution, takes employee funds and our matching funds. So this stays 100% funded throughout.
Are you
the
gonna be
life.
there Monday just in case some, I won't
Yes.
ask it again.
No, I will, I'm planning, I actually I talked to Mayor DeVore today, make sure he was aware that I was planning on being there asking for something. So I'm planning on being there on Monday, to present and ask, and answer any questions.
Okay. Feel like I'm done.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Savion Calhoun Solar PPA amendment.
Yes. So, the talk of the past 12 months, seems like, has been challenges with bringing solar developments to the grid. We've signed at least one other amendment, I think 2 amendments have been brought to the board, adjusting PPAs that were signed either very early into COVID or before the supply chain disruptions. And one of the agreements that was on the table was the Calhoun County solar project. We have a PPA, or we have a purchase power commitment. MPPA has a purchase power agreement with the current developer. That project, just like all the other ones, has really been disrupted by international trade disputes, tariff circumvention navigation, or tariff circumvention investigations, COVID-related supply chain delays, significant run-up in material costs, labor costs, EPC, where EPC is engineer, procure, construct contractors, so basically soup to nut contractors. Price of EPC contractors has gone way up. A lot of EPC contractors have left the state of Michigan because of a lot of the problems. So this project fell in that bucket as well, and we're presenting a less than ideal amendment to that PPA for your consideration today. Some of the kind of overall scope of the project, the Calhoun County Solar Project's 125 megawatt total project. MPPA's portion, and there's a typo. MPPA's portion, oh yeah, it's MMPA. MPPA portion is 25 megawatts. Of that, our portion is only is 400 kW, so 0.4 megawatts. For us, this is a piece of a diversified power supply portfolio, diversified in resources, diversified in projects and geographic location. This represents slightly less than 1% of our annual around-the-clock energy need. But we've already established the need for this when we signed the first agreement, so really the focus of this discussion is what's included in the amendment. Most notably, the amendment includes a 45-ish% price increase. That's a tough pill to swallow, obviously, but if you look at that price compared to the alternative, not to the replacement power that we would have to secure if this project fell apart, this project has favorable mark-to-market, it's competitive against the alternative. The time, there's other benefits, but just from a financial perspective, alternative projects, if we don't execute this agreement, we'll need to enter into an agreement with either a hedge transaction or a bilateral hedge transaction, or secure alternative solar PPA. And again, this project has a positive mark-to-market right now, so we may not care for the 45% price increase, but if this project falls apart, the replacement power will be more expensive.
It basically, if we said no, we're not going to, and went out to find another source, we'd be paying more. So they kind of got you, and I understand, you know, a lot of it's not in their hands either because costs and everything have gone way up. And I will just say that we're not alone in this. It was interesting because Zealand was a part of this transaction also, and we observed, you know, they're in the same boat we are. They might be a little bit more, but
Everybody's in this, and that's why the project was sold. The developer, Savion, is not gonna build it regardless. The economics fell apart on them, and I'm assuming, some of this is assumption, but you know, it became unfavorable for them to move forward with the development. But you know, some benefits of this project, COD, commercial operation date, is no later than May 30th, 2025, so we're talking early 25. The replacement projects are 26 and 27, and they're speculative in nature. This one has an advanced MISO Q position, which Craig and I have talked about MISO Q quite a bit. That's a very favorable attribute of this project. MISO has paused all evaluations of new generation until they can make some proposed changes to the whole interconnection process. So the value of that advanced position is highly desirable. The developer itself, AES Energy, is a large energy company. They're not a solar developer or renewable developer. There's nothing wrong with doing business with renewable developers. We've done lots of them, but a more diversified business line helps bring stability in unstable times. So it's very favorable. The other piece of the developer that really highlights their confidence in being able to get this project done and provide MPPA members with more financial security is they actually increase the development securities by 3 times. If the original developer, if the path was to let the original development just fall apart and play out the development securities from the developer, we would have ended up with, as a MPPA would have ended up with just over $1 million, about $1.10 a megawatt hour. Doesn't move the needle if we take that development security and apply it to another project that's got that costs us $3 or $4 more a megawatt hour. But 3x does help supplement if this development falls apart, which obviously the developer wouldn't agree to 3x development security if they weren't pretty confident in their ability to execute the deal. But if it did fall apart, that $3.375 million would go a little bit further. It's still not going to replace the power by any means, but it does provide additional security for members in the project.
so with that said, I think there's not a lot of alternatives. I think it's something that we need to move forward with. So therefore, I would entertain any motions.
So was the impact the same for everyone that was involved? So, we're up 90%, but was everyone impacted like 45%?
So, interesting enough, originally DTE was the off-taker of the other 100 megawatts. They have backed out of the deal completely. I don't have visibility into the new counterparty. But yes, I would say, our pricing is in here. Our pricing is a flat $62 a megawatt hour for 20 years. The other projects that not necessarily directly involved, but pricing that MPPA is seeing is mid-60s, $65, $66 a megawatt, which is also why this pricing is actually favorable. It does show that the developer is eating some of the growing pain, or the pain, the financial strain. It's not just, hey, it's all on you. So I can't speak specifically to the other 100 megawatts, but I would be very surprised if the price was not very similar, if not more advantageous for us. But we don't have visibility into that.
Okay.
So responding to the chair's request for motion to approve the Calhoun amended restated purchase power commitment authorization presented in our packet.
Okay.
And for that,
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Hawaii, D. So again, as I probably stated before, I watch too much news. And again, watching the devastation that's going on in Hawaii, it's something that I think the outcomes, different things that's being said, I think it is applicable to little old Lowell. And what I mean by that is because of so there's currently lawsuits that are started. They're trying to determine the exact cause of it. And it would appear that because they had a hurricane south of Hawaii and it wasn't a direct hit, but it was the winds and everything, they're blaming the power companies for not de-energizing the lines before the high winds came and knocked the lines down, arc, started the fire, and everybody, unless you're living in a cave, everybody knows what the devastation was out there. So therefore, I put in there's a lot of things that go on. So in that conversation, it's been, okay, if we de-energized the lines, would the water system work? Would there be enough pressure to pump the fire hydrants? And it's a snowball effect. And I've already reached out to Mike Burns today to find out if our pumps, our wells, if we would de-energize lines, would that then not produce any? Do they have capability? And he wasn't sure. He was going to look into that. And then my goal is not to, could it happen here? Well, not today with how green it is and everything, but a short time ago when we're in a high drought and no burn warnings, bans. Thank you. It certainly could, and I think the other is to start this discussion. Who would have the authority to de-energize the lines? Would it be Lowell Light and Power? Would it be a combination of City Council and the Lowell Light and Power Board? I mean, there's a lot of things that I think it behooves us to at least start a conversation about that. I've seen other things go on in the world. I was really depressed a couple weeks ago listening to the high temperatures and everything, and in 70, and I say 70 short years, this study, it wasn't like 2, 3, 4, 500 years from now. It was in 70 years, the southern part of the United States could very well be uninhabitable because of the temperature. That's not necessarily my kids, but that's my grandkids fall into that. So again, I think it's never too soon to at least start. I don't want this to drag out. This is no need to have this an hour discussion, but I think it's time that we do think about some of these things, and maybe it's a joint venture with a good subject with City Council.
Say we should have. When was our last joint meeting with the city? And
Been a while.
okay, and maybe we should have one and put this on that agenda then.
And if I can interject a little bit.
Yep.
Not to say it's not a City Council Light and Power Board discussion. I really think that in the event that we are discussing turning the power off intentionally, that's going to be, in the moment, that's an operational decision. And I will respectfully ask for that authority myself.
Okay.
We will never plan for the right situation that would necessitate turning off the power. And in those moments, things materialize very quickly. And I'd also say, Ryan works storms. I'm sure you've done numerous hurricanes. It's not standard practice to turn the lights off. The only place I've seen it standard practice to turn the lights off intentionally is in California, and that's a result of PG&E. And they do that. They do rolling blackouts to help prevent the possibility of wildfires. I would also look back at, I think before we make any decision on Maui or lessons learned, is we really need to understand the root causes. You know, you got my brain really thinking after this. So these aren't off the cuff type of thoughts. I've been thinking a lot since we talked, and we really need to understand what happened. Because like out in PG&E, and I'm not intimately familiar with what happened with PG&E and all the details and all the findings, but a lot of what I believe to be the root cause is vegetation management. And because they fell behind on vegetation management, it increased the likelihood. If you do everything right, if a utility does everything right, and have aggressive protection schemes, and they're making sure their system's operating the way it should, and their effective vegetation management, there's no negligence. Obviously, we want to assist and participate in any disaster, but I think we also should remember that turning off the lights is potentially more dangerous than keeping the lights on, especially during extreme events. The fire department right now does not have a standby generator. I know that for a fact. Actually, shouldn't say fact. I've been told by somebody that's very reliable, that's sitting on the other end of the table, giving me the thumbs up in the middle of this, that they don't have a generator. So, I think, and that's why I go back to say, in the moment, it was going to be a very unique set of circumstances that necessitates it. And more than likely, we're selecting where is the highest likelihood. And the other thing that Casey and I actually got in a brainstorm after we talked, we were in another meeting, and I think a better conversation is what type of event could necessitate, not get, and this is part of the conversation we had, is not get married to the idea that it's a wildfire. Because I think more than likely it's a 100-year flood or something here. Granted, part of what we're talking about is you don't hear about wildfires in Hawaii typically, so it's a bad example, but Michigan's not, in recent years, really known for a high probability of wildfires. Granted, I think the whole state burned once or twice or whatever. I think there's been some massive historical fires in Michigan, and the UP's a different animal, but if you look at from a fire perspective, what's the fuel sources and likelihood that there's a wildfire that impacts our distribution system? It's probably less likely than a historic flood or some other type of natural disaster. Some of the things that are important for us from an operational standpoint are doing relay testing, make sure our system is coordinated, because I kind of question, in an event, I don't want to speculate on anything, Maui, that this is irrelevant to that situation, but I've worked some hurricanes, specifically after Hurricane Irene, and I can remember a specific line that fell on a sandy road by the shore, and the line sat on the ground and burned. And the sand had actually turned to glass, the whole strip down the middle of this road. If we run into situations like that, yeah, that's a major hazard, major fire, so we need to proactively turn lights off at that point.
And more I think about, yes, that is an operational thing, and yes, it should be in your hands. And I mean, you at your level will talk to the city about coordinating any efforts.
But if there are structural conversations that the board and council want to have, I'd be supportive. But in that moment, my one ask is that we have that flexibility. I have the unfortunate experience of turning the lights off intentionally, and it was better make the call right now. And it was nothing that we had prepared for. A customer had got into some primary, and it ultimately was a life-changing, he didn't pass away, but it was a life-changing event for him. And I got a phone call and said, there's somebody laying on the power line, and I think they're dead. Went to skate and turn the lights off. That's it. There's no time, we weren't prepared for that, we didn't have a contingency plan in place that said, hey, what are the circumstances now? I think the conversations are good conversations to have, but, and we've had something similar happen on our system, unfortunately, at King Milling, when the contractor passed away, we had to turn the lights off, and that was right now, Mark made the call even. So when I asked that I retain that authority, it's really me to be delegated even to Ryan, because Ryan's gonna be the most appropriate person at that point. He's gonna know boots on the ground, what's happening on our system that could potentially necessitate that, but I will be waiting and watching for, kind of some investigation and what lessons are there to be learned, because I think it's important to learn lessons from catastrophes like this.
And
Well, I
that's,
think that's the important part of it is understanding kind of what is the framework in which you make that decision, or Ryan or whoever. Right, it's because like he said that the question came up because there's lawsuits, right? And so I don't want that decision to be made, well, we better shut off the power so we don't get sued. We want to shut off the power because that's the best thing for safety. And sometimes keeping it on, like you said, is better for safety in a storm. So make sure we kind of understand
To me, it has to
what
be
the decision comes down to.
Yeah, for me, it's truly an imminent danger that the distribution system creates a hazard.
Mhm.
Whether that's wildfire, again, I think it's more likely that wires are on the ground and for some reason they're not tripping protective relays, or they're not blowing fuses. And part of that though is proactively doing coordination studies and making sure that, you have a high enough, fault current. You have everything coordinated so that if something falls at the end of the line, it's caught by a fuse. It's not just burning in the open and
Right.
sitting on the
That's
ground.
what I was going to wonder is how likely is following the line going to start something or not trip off in the first place? And I guess that's the part I don't understand. I know you and those guys know, but.
And that's Casey's probably one of the best equipped. There are so many variables into that, impedance, available fault current impedance, protective relays. Is it on a relay? Is it on a fuse? If it's on a fuse, what type of fuse? There's a lot of factors there's always more variables involved in the decision than you can possibly plan for. But having a framework, and really that framework comes down, for me, is the distribution system is creating or has already created an imminent danger to safety. It really is a life safety issue if you're choosing to turn off the lights outside of a load shed event where we're instructed to turn the lights off and implement rolling volleyballs or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little even better than the city council making that decision, Charlie, or how do you prep for it, so you even start at the county level and, get more people involved than just city and low-lying power. What's the big picture for anything? Because they also lost their emergency notification as towers were burned down. And could that have caused the fire versus the electrical and cell towers and the communication path? So it's a lot.
And
I'm
that's
waiting to hear more and more details as we come out, so.
And I'd say, the closest example of, a type of event that might cause it is the flood work.
Mhm.
And I know the city does, Ryan's more involved than I've ever been in prepping for floods, but the city does a really good job of leading the charge and pulling together the necessary parties to plan for that, because it tends to be, there's almost never going to be a natural disaster that impacts Lowell alone. It's going to come through Grand Rapids. It's going to be a county-wide, a region-wide. The most likely thing to more exclusively hit Lowell is something like a tornado, something that's more isolated. But even in that case, we're bringing in emergency management, bringing in whoever the greater parties are, whether that's at the federal level or the state or county level, and pulling in all the EMA directors and different emergency personnel to help coordinate those things.
okay, I just felt like it was a conversation to start.
Yep. I agree that if there's anything, I think it's a good conversation to have. You got me thinking big time today, obviously. I think we talked to three. We talked to three, and I put a lot of thought into it because it's important. even if we don't make any changes, it's important to choose to not make any changes and do an evaluation internally. So absolutely, I think it's a great topic of discussion.
Okay, moving on, informational items.
First is this, and I don't have anything in your board packet. Perry and I talked about this a little bit today. Thought process is we kind of work through the strategic planning workshop. Now, the way that we're kind of treating it is it's almost more a workshop on how to do a strategic plan instead of trying to actually work through the development of strategic plans. So we were talking, and Perry had the idea of kind of taking all the information we get through all 6 sessions, boil it down to the meat and potatoes of the presentation, get that into the board's hands, and then I think we're a little better equipped to help. Can't say we're equipped to guide things, but I think there's pieces of the process that the board could choose to tackle if you all wanted, but I don't know what other comments you have.
So I think, and I probably have said this before, this workshop that we're going through, I think has been great. I think it's actually been, I personally think it's better being remote, doing it remotely than in-house. I mean, having somebody come and doing it, because they hand us homework to do before the next meeting and different things. And there's 4 of us that are participating. And again, we are the only ones that actually have a strategic plan on whether it meets all, that's debatable, whether it meets all of our needs or not. But the other 3 are getting a lot out of it. I think we're getting a lot out of it. I don't want to diminish it, but I just think because we're kind of a step ahead of what it is, and the biggest thing that I would take away from this is if you have 30 to 40 priorities, none of them become priorities. You need to have them, scale down, make these 7 to 10 things your priority, and those other things, they're out there and they can become priorities at some point, but that's kind of the biggest thing that one of the biggest things that I'm taking away from that. But our plan is to put it all together, because the other, not just ours, but the other 3 will have their slides, their homework, and we'll be able to share those things, and some of, I think they're great having that information from the other ones, and I'm gonna, I think one of them is Charlevoix, and Charlevoix has a lot of challenges, and when I say that is because during the normal time of the year,
They serve, the stat that I remember, and I'll get it wrong, but it's close. They serve 4,500 meters and only have 1,800 year-round residents. And that's resident, one's comparing people to electric, so that's people to electric service. So of the 1,800 full-time residents, that's probably 1,000 electric services maybe, so,
I mean, it was like 18% of their, are year-round, things that they can plan on year-round. The other 82% are all summer, are all coming in the summer months. I mean, it's all seasonal, and to plan on those things. So again, I think it's great for us. It's been great, and I think we'll get those, and and share them with the whole board, and then we'll talk about, going through them and looking at as a whole, looking at our strategic plan, but again, I think the biggest thing was, the biggest takeaway I had, from where we sit is, you need, if they're gonna truly be a priority, the numbers are small. They're not this wish list of 50 different items.
And I think one of the other takeaways for us, or for me, has been, and nothing against the participants, they're all top-notch utilities, they really are some of the, very well-run utilities in the state. But strategically, I've seen the benefits of our strategic plan. We are further along in rate design. We are further along in, some other strategic priorities, AMI, technology utilization. There are, so a lot of the strategic plan development from them is focused on how to advance some of those things that we have been able to overcome as challenges so far. So a lot of it's been affirmation that the current strategic plan has led us in a good direction, or the utility in general, the board, we're heading in, we've been on a good path and we're staying on a good path. So I think a lot of the other participants are looking to make strategic shifts to get prepared for industry changes, or adapting to new technologies, or catching up on, focus on unfocused on areas or things. So I think there's been a lot of that we're, it's a compliment to the board. We've done a lot right as a utility. You all have done a lot
And
right.
past boards,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
And, I'll second that by saying, going to conferences and seeing where other people are, and learning just some history on how things have evolved here, where we once were and where we are right now. And yes, it has been a result of the strategic plan. So it's good to see.
I feel though, that was just, the reason why we're so successful, gentlemen, is because we have great employees that keeps their ear to the ground and their eyes wide open to see what's new on the horizon and what we need.
I got a good example of that. I got an email from somebody in the company recently. Just sat through this webinar, this class. What do we need to be doing about this? Actually, but it was great because it was about AI. And I was like, oh, I read the email, I was gone, I think she was gone, I was like, I don't know what she's referring to, but this would be a good conversation. I think I sat down and said, I know what AI is, but what do you mean? What should we be doing? And it just opens up, but it was this ear to the ground. She saw a webinar out there, it was like, hey, this might be important for us. So we have a group of employees that very much embrace a continual improvement mentality. So they're always, nobody just sits back and says,
Nobody's
cool.
sitting back in cruise control.
You can't-
That's what I love about
But,
your
it's-
employees. They're not doing that.
It's kind of the two-way between, from the board this way and the employees that way. And it's, it creates an environment, when I come around, it's always great to see that everybody wants to be here, and that's important, that culture is being created here.
And I'll agree with Tina 100% with that, but I also believe it's the company as a whole, from the board all the way down. Because Tina, if you weren't supporting things that the board has done, that would also change the outlook of our employees. So it's not, I think, I love what I hear from you, but at the same time, I think you don't give yourself enough credit. Because if you weren't making some of these, when it comes to benefits coming through everything else, which comes directly from the board, you wouldn't necessarily have the staff that you have currently now. The board hires the general manager. If we didn't do that, and
And the right general manager has been hired, and he, in his way,
Right.
creates the
so
culture.
I believe it is a company-wide, great company, great thing, and it's from the lowest person on the totem pole to the highest person on the totem pole. And without a key ingredient anywhere in that chain, we wouldn't have the organization that we do.
As an observer, one thing I noticed, nobody here rests on their laurel. What did I do yesterday? You guys are always looking at how do we better ourselves in the future, whether it's tomorrow, 5 years down the road. And if you guys don't have that kind of vision, then you're gonna get complacent, and then you're gonna not improve. You're just, Miles and I didn't have these meetings. It'll just be the same, but all of you guys in this room.
We try to run right below the red line on the RPM gauge. Julie might think, but there's times that we definitely get in, we've had some discussions. There's times that it revs up into the red a little bit, but, we try to go.
It's good to have.
Right now it's full bore in the red.
I think we all are here creating a culture of excellence, and we all want to keep doing that, and I think that is excellent.
I think that's well put. I appreciate it, thank you.
Moving on.
All right, so, got a little different look with some of the informational items. We'll start with, we've shuffled some things around and it's almost an appendix of all the supplemental information in there that we don't spend, it's got the performance data chart, it's a lot of numbers, the full income statement. We don't spend much time talking about the full income statement. It's really about the consolidated income statement, helping focus on big picture stuff. If there are things that we need to dive into, it's still available. It's available for your review. Happy to answer any questions, but part of this is taking some of the discussion on how can we present data a little differently. Also with the performance data, we took some of the graphs and modified them a little bit, very similar to what you saw last month. But this first graph, I believe, is what we were talking about as a long annual look back. It's year by year. So the thought is we'll put this in the board packet once a year to kind of update. It only changes once a year, but what you have is fiscal year volumetric sales in total, and then residential, commercial, industrial, kind of all broken out. And I think there's some neat things, mostly looking at just last year, 2022 to 23. It's the first real dip we've seen in overall sales since probably, FY20, the tail end of that's COVID. So I think there's some interesting data points to pull from here. Some of the stuff where lines really move early on, I actually asked Megan a little bit about that, and I think a lot of that has to do with the work that we've done with King Milling to consolidate meters, and so there's some of that is kind of noise in it, but I thought this was an interesting graph. We knew that we were watching last year that volumetric sales were trending down compared to the year before, but didn't have necessarily a good sense of where it stacked up in a 10-12 year look back. So saw a lot of, I thought this was a real interesting graph and helpful for me, to just kind of put big picture on it, and thought it'd be useful for the board. Moving to the next, I keep forgetting, this is my computer, that's your computer. The next set of graphs, there's four graphs, total kilowatt hour sales. And I know that one of the feedback from you last month is, the lines kind of get jumbled together a little bit. From us internally, I see a lot of value in this, from my perspective, and that It gives me a lot of information kind of all packed into one. So if you'll notice in July, it's the only one that has the orange bar. And as we move through the fiscal year, the 20, 21, 22, 23 will not change. And we'll start to build a 5-year history across this. Next year, we'll either decide to drop off 20 or add in another one and build. So the performance data used to give you a comparison to the same month last year, but that doesn't really, 2 data points don't create a trend. You kind of want to look at what's a normal July look like overall, and then the lines kind of all the line itself is a year-to-date line. This one you don't notice it as much; they do stack pretty close to each other. But what I thought was useful is in some of the other graphs you really start to see some of that deviation, and you see over the course of the year, and you wouldn't expect much year-to-year deviation in 1 month or 2 months, but like this one, by the time you push all the way out to residential, you kind of have to, you see where, you got to look down at the legend a little bit, so it's not quite as intuitive, but like this one, you can really see where residential stacked up at the end of the year, and you're able to see it growing over the course of the year. And you can also look month to month and see which months, where we deviated the most in individual months. And then this also gives you a little bit of a load shape throughout the year, and you can start to get a sense of residential or class load shape throughout the year. There's some interesting pieces to this. One of the things that I think is really interesting is that July 2021, that would be July of 2020. And that residential usage is through the roof. That's COVID. So you really can start to see where some of those outliers are. But wanted to present this. Happy to receive any feedback on how we can make these better. But staff, we see a lot of value in using these. There's a lot of data without too many data points, I guess, as far as too much going on. So with that, I'd be happy to take any feedback or anything on these, but this is a new way of presenting some of this data. Moving on, cost per kilowatt hour. Again, there's a lot that the board can choose. I want to pause a little bit on investments in cash. We had we had a challenging month last month, but the cash recovered quite well. Campbell 3 had a forced outage, and we had to go out and procure through bilateral transactions significant replacement power. So our replacement power through hedge purchase transactions, just bilateral transaction, that flows. It's a timing issue. It flows through, and we pay for it basically the week we're using it. Where like when Campbell's operating, the fuel that it burns, we don't actually pay for that. I don't remember if that's a month behind or 2 months behind, but there's a lag in that where there's not a lag from a bilateral perspective because it's a market transaction. So during this month, we had large weekly invoices. It happened to correlate with our monthly invoice. We were paying for no coal from Campbell during the spring planned outage, so timing kind of worked out to our favor. If we would have had a coal bill in there from Campbell, it would have been a really expensive month. But it all worked. I know there's been a lot of talk of timing, and it's just a piece. It's a product of it. Over the long haul, it would all wash out. But we had some very, very expensive weekly invoices last month. We also go ahead.
I should know this, or I've probably been told before, but I forget. So when you say we, when you're having to go out and procure power on the open market, that's MPPA is doing that for us, and then we're,
Yes.
it's, when you say we, it's not somebody in our office that's making a call and going, I need power
No, it is.
Everything's run through MPPA.
All power, for us,
Okay.
all power supply purchases funnel through MPPA. So the we is, a lot of times it's a collective we,
Yep.
it's us and MPPA.
Mhm.
So I worked, I got an email, hey, here's indicative pricing here, because they're always looking at the market and, it's basically a bid process. We're looking for this strip, we're looking for and you can buy it, just 8 hours, and Monday through Friday, 8 hours in the day, certain hours you can do, 24/7 strips, you can do 2 by 24, which is 2 days, 24 hours, Saturday and Sunday. So there's different ways that they can carve it up. So they look at what replacement need we have, solicit bids for that, and then present them to me. The board has given me the authority to execute any transaction as far as the hedge, risk management hedge strategy. So then I review that, work with them, understand what it is we're accomplishing. Is this aligned with how we want to manage this risk? Is it in alignment with risk management policy? So that's the we. It's really heavily an MPPA.
And the person at MPPA is Steve, right? Or
No,
he's
it's
integral part of it.
I'm trying to think of I don't know who's soliciting most of the bids on hedge or on bilateral transactions.
Is it Brent?
I think it's Brent, and I believe Brent reports is under Steve's wing.
Gotcha.
So it's either you met Bob Lowell.
Yep.
He's one of the directors, and then Steve's another one, and then there's the CFO. And to be honest, I don't quite understand what falls under Steve's purview and what falls under Bob's purview, because they're both involved in power supply.
Right.
So it's under one of their purviews, overseen by one of them, but I believe Brent Taylor is the one that tends to go out and solicit bids and evaluate competitiveness. And then they also have Gavin Ellis, who is, I don't know exactly what his title is, but he's a guru when it comes to analytics, and he's implementing a lot of advanced analytics. So they're using quantitative tools to evaluate the pricing and understand what's the market volatility, where's the second standard deviation, third standard, what is the likelihood and frequency that this price would be a bad price, a good price. So they have a whole set of analytic tools, so it touches their analytics department, it touches the bidding process, and then they're also always looking at, they regularly get indicative pricing to understand what the market is doing. So there's a lot of pieces there's a lot of pieces in their arena to the we. The we on our side is usually, can you please explain the transaction?
Yeah, and we're lucky to have them, that team, it's a good
They do a great
team.
job.
And that's, I guess, part of my point is, without MPPA, we'd be struggling.
Yeah, there is to give a sense of how difficult it is to market interface. There is only one member in Michigan that does their own market interfacing and doesn't use MPPA. And Holland is one of the biggest municipals in the state, and they use MPPA for market balancing and market interfacing. So it's not something we could bring in-house.
You'd have to hire somebody else, or at least a team, yeah.
Market interfacing is I'm not honestly sure. I couldn't begin to tell you what it would take for us to do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't even want to,
Yeah,
because I know it's a lot,
It would
so,
be a It would be a significant overhaul of how we do
Yeah.
everything.
yeah, and it would just not be worth, got a good deal going, so.
But as far as investments and cash here, the only thing I wanted to highlight too is the third bar down, the dark blue. You'll notice that one grew quite a bit this month. That's us just taking advantage of favorable interest rates. 1-year treasury notes are over 5% right now. So Megan kind of handles all of our investment management and all that. I've asked her, and she's been taking upon her own self really a lot to be evaluating the best opportunities to leverage interest rates. So this includes an additional $250,000 investment in a 1-year treasury note to in our investment portfolio. We do have a $250,000 treasury note that is set to be returned in October, I believe, that we'll reinvest at an even higher rate. We felt good about the 4.25 that we got on that one a year ago, and we'll probably get closer to 5.25 a year later. So wanted to highlight that, but the big drop in the overall height of the bar there is approximately $250,000 bond payment that we made. You'll notice the bond redemption fund, I believe, yes, which is one further down. You'll notice it shrunk to almost non-existent. So it's just a regular bond payment that we had been planning for. If you look, you kind of strip away some of those, and you just look at what our operating cash is. Our operating cash actually grew. The non-allocated pieces, we don't call bond redemption fund restricted, but it's internally restricted. But if a catastrophe happened, we could always use that to fund, but obviously that's a Band-Aid solution. So wanted to highlight a little bit of that in investment in cash. And then other than that, there's aging analysis, delinquent balances, the graph for all electric requirements, and then the graph for the paperless billing, auto pay, portal registrations. Last graph is the PCA and PCA revenue. It's definitely not a surprise for me to see this increase this time of year. We're starting, especially now, to see some of the summer charges start to get factored into the PCA. There's a 2-month lag on the PCA to get all of our costs in the books before we calculate it. So the July is starting to get some of those really early summer, and our volume's going up. So we're still learning how that's going to, still learning the nuances and how that's going to, where all the levers are to pull and what moves what when you start pulling them, because there's a lot of pieces to that calculation. But the gist of it is I'm not surprised that it's going up in the summer, as our summer costs for transmission and capacity related costs are much higher in the summer. And that is performance data. We'll hand this over to Ryan to review outages, please.
Well, July was fairly busy. Quite a few tree issues, a couple equipment problems. One location there on Sibley Street was discovered that after the fuse was blown and the fuse size was looked at, the crews used the wrong chart, because we have 2 different fuse charts in our trucks because we have 2 different primary voltages. And they fused it for the upcoming voltage for that area after we did a conversion, so that was not, it was a lighter fuse than it should have been. So worker error there, kind of a bummer, but that sometimes happens. Squirrel out on Overley, that pole has been corrected, so the squirrel won't be able to hit us there again. 13,000 block area, which is way outside of town. It's clear out on 36th Street and Pratt Lake area. That pretty good storm went through that day, and a couple treetops broke off. Nothing that we would have ever trimmed, given the distance that they were from the main line, but they broke off and landed, leaned over on our line, so it caused an outage. Same thing with Tyler Trail, a very large tree tipped over. Because you've seen them around town, and maybe in your own yard, there's these oak trees that just are giant arches. And it's just trees like that back in this driveway. The customer actually gave us permission to cut several of other ones down back in there to try to help not let this happen again. So we'll get to that.
Yeah. Always.
What's the best time to ask?
Yep.
Same thing on G Drive. There's a tree that was pretty tall and quite a ways away from the line, but it tipped over and hit our stuff. It's nothing that we would have ever proactively done anything with. It's just the way it works sometimes. So still fairly reliable. 2023 was fairly close to 2022 in terms of available. The AC statistics, we were 99.9956 this year. Last year it was 99.9972. So not terribly different, but a little bit backwards. But quite a few outages this month.
It's to be expected in the summer, but, you know, especially the challenging growing season we've had. Ryan and I have talked about it a lot. It was dry, and then rained. And Ryan pointed out, I never would have noticed, we were walking around Schneider Manor today, and there's a little apple tree out back, just loaded with green apples. And we even started to think about ripening. It's just a weird season. And the growing has definitely occurred. As the rain has picked up, trees have gone nuts, so the guys do a great job proactively and reactively addressing these. You know, we proactively address anything we can, but when we do have to react, like the squirrel, they're taking the next steps to mitigate the future outage there. So proactive and reactive approaches to managing outages.
So that, and I know the answer, so the outage up at the middle school is in next month?
Yes,
You know, it took me a while to figure out, why is my outdoor lights coming on so late and staying on so long? And I'm going like, oh yeah, we had an outage.
So
It's not the
delay
timer.
your timer.
Huh?
Okay.
The timer.
I do like.
And then inside, you know, that's one thing,
Oh, yeah.
which I'm used to that.
I do like how Ryan said that the squirrel has been corrected. That's a line that was in The Shining by the bartender when he asked if his family has been corrected. Very well put.
Completely unintentional, I'm sure, but I like it. I'm gonna watch that movie just to see it.
we've only had one repeat offender on a pole that's been fixed up with all the proper animal mitigation items, and that was because the trees grew a little too close and the squirrel gained access to higher up on the pole than he should have because of the trees. So the stuff works if we can get it done.
Thank you, Ryan. I'll move on to income statement. Again, this is just the consolidated income statement at this point, but there's really there tends to not be a whole lot to pull from the first one, first income statement of the year. Obviously, I like that there's a lot of stuff coming in under budget. Obviously, it won't. You know, the anticipation is, you know, some of those things are just expenses that occur later in the year. Sometimes they're weighted differently, and we try to. Well, Megan does a really good job of looking at historic distribution of expenses throughout the year, and trying to allocate monthly budgets, but it's not an exact science, that's for sure. One thing I will note that is positive is we only finished, even with the large timing expenses from the bilateral transactions for Campbell's replacement power, we only finished 4.6% over budget on power supply. Anticipation is that will come back. Sales revenue is definitely down a little bit, down about 2%. But the way that you know, a lot of that was factored in, some of that's later in the year. So we definitely anticipate, don't anticipate this to be a trend. It's a single data point. We'll start monitoring a little more closely as we get multiple data points there to see where we're trending in the right direction, where we're trending in a direction that may need some corrective action. But there's always adjustments to the budget throughout the year. We just need to stay on top of it. But ended up finishing with a very healthy net income, pretty much you know, ahead of last year, slightly behind the budget so far, but still in a healthy position after 1 month. Capital projects, there's really not much to report. The only real movement is in the east side feed. Next month you'll start seeing quite a bit more activity in the capital projects. I will say that we did purchase a computer that's in the capital assets purchased. That's what that is. That's a computer and set up for, as a response, one of the responses to some of the disgruntled customers we're having is we're increasing visibility into the camera system, which we had already planned on, but we're That's a computer that's going to be dedicated to being a viewing station for the cameras. We're setting up a TV and monitor in the main office so that anybody kind of operating in the customer-facing area always has access and visibility into the cameras, whether that's the gate here because they can open it here, or who's coming in the door, what's happening around our building. That's what that's there doing. So again, there will be a lot more activity to come, but right now, just not a whole lot to report on. All right. So this is a little impromptu presentation. Wanted to highlight the tree giveaway program that we're doing. It's called Energy Saving Trees. I think Daniel is the only board member that has signed up for a tree, so we still have a few trees left. If anybody is interested in a pin oak or a river birch, those are what's left. But thought I'd give the board a little bit of an overview. We partnered with the Arbor Day Foundation, who has a partnership actually with the Davey Institute, who funded the very first part of my retirement account for 4 years coming out of college. But they have a neat program. It's called Energy Saving Trees. We knew we wanted to do something like this, but wanted an existing platform. Didn't want to try and build something from the ground up if there's something out there. This is the program that Holland uses through, they have the same partnership. They give out a few more trees than us. But I thought it was neat because we get a map essentially of where everything is, and as you zoom in, it's a dynamic map. So Lisa pulled a view where you can kind of see where they are. You zoom out a little further, and everything sits in Lowell. You zoom in, zoom out, everything sits on Lowell. You zoom in, and you get more exact locations. But kind of an interesting distribution of where the trees are going. A good mix of in the city, out of the city, in neighborhoods, in older parts of town, newer parts of town. It really is a good mix. So the program is being used by a lot of people and a diverse group of people. It's been fun so far. I do see one, Ryan, that we need to look into because it's not on our system. I noticed it right before I came. That one up in the top left there in Stony Bluff.
That one's not approved.
No, I was saying.
Shouldn't be.
And that's where it's probably not approved. So one of the things that is interesting about this is Ryan and Lisa have actually been sitting down daily, weekly, and Ryan's looking into it right now. But we have to physically approve where these are going. So the nice thing about that is if somebody's proposing to plant one under a power line or on top of an underground service, or where we have right next to a transformer, we have the right to reject them, or if they don't adhere to the program guidelines. So
Right.
we retain a lot of control. Ryan's actually, I'm pretty sure he's going in right now and looking to see if that one's been rejected.
Lisa and I talked about it, and that one, we definitely know that
Yeah.
one wasn't approved.
So, and again, it's a dynamic process. They sit on here until they're rejected, and then that tree goes back into inventory. So if you'll scroll down just a little bit, Julie. This is we did 100 total trees. We did 20 of each of the 5 there. As you can tell, the pin oak and river birch were not nearly as popular as the other ones. This is one of those learning curves. I think fewer trees, and people like the colorful trees.
Yes.
And I think a lot of it is the pictures that they put on the thing, the river, or the eastern redbud, the maple tree, the prairie fire apple, crab apple. The pictures are all very bright pictures. I don't know if they're fall or spring picture, right? And then the pin oak is a pin oak. It's pin oak. So, but when we pick trees, we look to adhere to the spirit of the program. They're energy saving trees. We're not trying to give away ornamental trees. We're trying to have a purpose in what we're doing. So if you scroll down a little bit further, Julie, one of the neat things with this is it gives us interesting stats collectively. So it'll tell you, energy savings in kilowatt hours from the trees. It'll give you stormwater runoff, carbon sequestration. Shows a lot of the benefits and hits on a lot of different focuses of the utility. How much air pollution does it filter out? And obviously, this is not an exact science. It's very much dependent on the customer putting information in there. But if you'll scroll to the next next one, this is actually somebody that we all know, but the process is pretty neat. If you scroll just a little bit more, Julie, a little more, sorry. Keep going, keep going. That's where I was looking for. But the process itself is you take the white box, you're supposed to outline your house, and then you plant, you put your tree where you're intending to plant, and it gives you neat statistics about, how much energy it's gonna save a year as a fully matured tree. Year one, not gonna happen. They're 5 gallon, either 3 or 5 gallon trees, so anywhere between 3 and 6 foot tall. We've not been given definitive information on exactly what the size is gonna be, but you can see the long-term benefits of planting a tree. And it's pretty interesting because what we found is that, in my head, I thought a south-facing tree is where you're gonna save the most money. Give you shade in the summer. Actually, we reached out to the Davy Institute and asked why is it showing that north and northwest is the optimal place, and it's because of passive solar in the winter. You plant a south-facing tree in the winter, and you eliminate your ability to get radiant heat from the sun. So it's actually the winter savings is. Sorry, Dana, just but it was an interesting, so we was kind of to check the validity, not the validity, but understand the why. We wanted to understand the why, and it turns out that in our area, the north to northwest is the optimal place to plant a tree. I don't remember the exact answer I gave, but I remember going, I'm very satisfied with that answer. That's what I remember. Thank you. I asked the why and you had an answer.
Yeah, so when Charlie talked to me about this, and there was a last minute thought came into my head, and hopefully we'll pursue it for the following year, is whether it's through the cable TV fund or whether it's through the Lowell Area Community Fund, is look to purchase water bags, and that we would then, with the tree, also give a water bag with that tree, because again, if you're planting a tree and if you're not watering it and taking, making sure that it's gonna grow, so, and we looked into it, and the water bags are, for 25 water bags is like $277. So it's a $1,000 purchase for us for 100 trees. And again, we felt like, that maybe we could partner with one of the grants, local grants, to be able to do that, not this year, but in the following years, because again.
It's an excellent idea.
Are you gonna do this every year then?
This is year one. We'll
Okay.
make that decision after year one's done. I would like to. I think it's a great program. It's been successful in Holland. One of the challenges is they don't like to do quantities as small as we've asked them to do, 100 trees. I can tell you, we would struggle to, it's not sustainable to give 200 trees out every year. You hit all of our residential customers
Right.
pretty quickly. Anybody that's interested, because not we have 2,000-ish residential customers. A lot of them live in apartments, a lot of them rent, a lot of them don't have the right to plant a tree for this program. They go plant a tree somewhere, they have a tree, but it doesn't really save on energy.
Is there a way we could, one, partner with one other MPPA member, or even have MPPA sponsor it, and then the individual utilities or MMEA?
It'd probably be an MMEA
Yeah.
program. If it becomes a roadblock and we want to continue, we will look for partners and solutions. Because there are pieces of it, there's a lot of factors to consider, one being workload. It's a little more time consuming and labor intensive than I think
Then
we
just handing out
initially.
a tree.
Yeah, I mean, there's a review process, and Ryan can speak better to the amount of time he spent reviewing these, but it's not 10 minutes.
Okay.
You know, I don't know how many hours you guys have.
It's not, it doesn't take that long, it's
Yeah.
pretty easy. Just-
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, Lisa checks to make sure they're actually not a renter, and then I check the placement of the tree, and we just sit right there and zip right through.
Right
It's
done.
pretty quick and easy, and we did deny the one that you spoke of up on Old Gun Club. That one has been denied, I double checked that, but I thought it was, we just talked about it yesterday.
Not just for this program, but if I was to say I want to plant a tree in the northwest of my yard, how would I go about contacting you guys then to say, hey, is this a good place, are there utilities under there? How do I also get support and help from?
So the first thing that you should do before you ever dig, call 811. And it's,
I
I mean,
understand, yeah.
but that, we have guidelines that Ryan's gonna pin to you. So we have, I guess, long story short, we have resources.
The Arbor Board thing.
Yeah,
Package.
we have that, so we are prepared. The best way is just call us. Ryan will come out and, do what he does best and talk to customers and make plans with them and, really work through the process.
Yeah.
That was another, you know, we had talked, or I said, well, you know, maybe the Arbor Board, could provide bags or, you know, or, you know, that type of, so it's just partnering with somebody, because again, to make it as easy as possible for the tree to have a successful life. And if you have water bags, you know, you fill them up and they just trickle and.
And one of the challenges we've talked about, one of the things that we could look at is what percentage of trees go in the city versus out of the city. You know, keeping in, we regularly run into challenges where our service territory doesn't overlap 100%, or, well, the city's boundaries don't encompass 100% of our service territory, so.
And that was where we're talking about Arbor Board. If we went to Arbor Board funding, then that all had to be like in the city, whereas we're taking in our usage service area. So, and some of those trees are going outside the city. So that's where the community fund or cable TV.
Yeah, because it supports the.
So the only other thing I'll include about this is if any board member is available, the fund, one of the things that really, you'll notice on the right there, pickup location, we're gonna do a quasi-open house a little bit. Perry and I have talked for about a year and a half now about how do we show off this facility. We've invested a lot of money into this. It's something we're all proud of. Thought we'd take the opportunity, and we're actually gonna be, preliminary plans are in place to do kind of a drive-through event where customers will be able, the pickup will all occur kind of driving through the hall, and then we're gonna direct cars around here, open up the generation facility, and do kind of an open house, do coffee, donuts. Ryan's talking about putting, you know, trucks, equipment outside so people can look at trucks. We've suspended all large truck traffic going to the Lighthouse that day. Thank you, Casey. I got a chance to say thank you. But if anybody is available and would like to help, please do.
It's the day of Fall Festival, Fallsburg Fall Festival.
Oh my God, that is.
Well, how about we'll all just go out there afterwards? You guys enjoy,
Yeah.
you'll be busy.
Yeah, he'll be on the porch and I'll be like 30 feet from him.
She'll be at,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the date,
museum and I'll be at Fallsburg.
the date was kind of a challenge for us, honestly. The date picked us. Because it was one of them, you know, we wanted to do it late in the summer to give them the best chance. You go too long, you get into the public power week before, you go any earlier, now you got Labor Day to deal with, so. One of the things that we talked about is maybe moving this to a spring event and trying to, I think birthday is probably too early in the year to be planting trees in Michigan. I don't really know. I'm not a arborist, but it's cold here. So April's still cold, colder than I'd like in April, but, so bad.
Wow.
I think fall is the best time to plant.
It is.
trees.
I would say, I think
We don't do
success
this
rate.
during Harvest Fest in
Yeah.
October, we could do that.
We talked about that, and the Arbor Day said that's a little late. The Arbor Day Foundation said they'd prefer not to push into October for
Okay.
plantings. Because the other thing is these people have to go home and they still have to plant them. They have to call an 811
Right.
ticket, they have to be
That's right.
motivated, which they all should, they've all signed up for it. It's not like we're forcing people to plant trees, but, you know, we want to make sure we give plenty of time to get them in the ground and.
That's a good date. Stick with, we're good with that.
But it's set now, so.
Yeah.
We've got people coming that day.
What day was it?
September 16th,
Saturday.
9 to noon. There'll be breakfast here first thing, I'm probably, well, there's a couple who's gonna show up, or I'm at least gonna show up
What
early to
time?
get 8 o'clock probably.
I'm gonna get things set up the night before, and maybe I'll be able to stop by for breakfast.
Right, that's great.
Breakfast will be about 8:15.
Okay, perfect.
We'll go down to Cameron and get flour for pancakes.
I was talking to Marty about that. All right, I'll roll on. I just wanted to provide an update. This was one that, it kind of, the timing, I don't want to say, the planning for all this happened way early, and it was kind of just pull the trigger, and I meant to put, do a little bit more information last month in the board packet, sent out the notice to everybody when it went out, but I did not, remember to include it in the board information last month, so.
What,
What's that?
on what, the trees?
Yeah, the trees, I meant to put,
Lisa sent out stuff to us.
oh, good, perfect. I thought she did.
Yeah, I mean, I signed up and, yeah,
All right.
Lisa had sent out two things, the picnic, which I'm sure you'll touch on, and also she was looking for help for the September 16th, so she sent that out to all the board members.
Great. I knew she said she was going to, I couldn't remember if I'd seen it or not, so. Cool, I'll run on to the manager's report, a lot of information. One thing I want to highlight in MPPA is the idea of, MPPA is looking at prepaid transactions for some of our renewable PPAs. Of importance to the board is there's a potential to save 6 to 10% on that PPA price. If you want to ask me the mechanism and mechanics of a prepaid transaction like this, I cannot tell you. It's a very, very complicated arrangement that essentially allows a for-profit company to leverage the arbitrage between tax exempt cost of money and non-tax exempt cost of money. No risk to us outside of time commitment from MPPA to vet these deals. It's not a new structure. MPPA's entered into prepaid natural gas transactions. But it was interesting, and I'm learning more and getting the lowdown. It's a pretty complicated, you have to have a pretty complicated understanding of IRS tax code to understand the opportunities for arbitrage. But because the kilowatt hours have ultimately come to a tax exempt entity, us, there's opportunities for other entities to leverage our tax exempt status. It's a win-win situation. Cost of money, if they can give us a deal better than the cost of money, then for them, then or a discount. That discount is all that the 6 to 10% savings comes through that arbitrage of tax exempt funding versus non-tax exempt funding. MPPA has hired Steve Vandermeer, who's doing the strategic planning workshop that Perry and I have been participating in, but they've hired Steve Vandermeer to conduct their strategic planning update in Holland next Tuesday. I was asked to participate in an interview with Steve. We talked for almost 2 hours preparing for the strategic planning session, and then I was, Pat Bowen had reached out to me and invited me to participate, so I'll be participating in the strategic planning workshop, MPPA strategic planning workshop next Tuesday. And then last thing is I'm hoping it all works out, but I've expressed interest in serving on an expanded executive committee at MPPA.
No.
We recently changed the,
No,
it's a committee.
that's how we got rid, that's how Steve.
Oh.
So,
I'll be here.
don't get all comfortable with
I'll make a commitment to you. I've seen you wag that finger. I remember Pat looking scared when you wagged that finger in his face. But I'm excited to participate, and I do enjoy being involved with MPPA, but
No.
stop. But you know, if,
Oh, stop!
if they didn't hire Steve, we wouldn't have Charlie.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so,
And I'm much
Charlie brings a different perspective. Steve was great, but Charlie brings a different perspective.
Charlie's our crown jewel. and
That's
he's not
right.
going anywhere.
So if it wasn't for them
I'm comfortable with
if
that.
it wasn't for MPPA hiring Steve, Charlie probably wouldn't be there. So,
Everything for a reason.
I'll say I'm very happy here, my family is too.
His wife, I think, would clobber him with his golf clubs.
We chose to
His wife can't
move here, this is where we wanted to raise our kids. Even though I didn't know Lowell existed 3 years ago. Yeah, about 3 years ago, I was discovering Lowell, Michigan.
Yes, you were, and you did your homework well.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
Prepared. All right, I'll move on. The one thing I want to highlight under the MMEA section, I think it's great that MMEA is getting more and more involved in promoting Public Power Week. They're going to sponsor a coloring contest again this year and give a $50 Amazon gift card to the winner of every utility that participates will be able to pick a winner. We did this last year, and we used the prize package from MPPA. We also pulled together our own prize package. But I think, can't say for sure, but I think MPPA saw some of the successes we've had, or MMEA saw some of the successes we had with promoting Public Power Week, and some of the other utilities that were involved and saw the positive, and really promoted that across the membership. So that's always positive. I like to think we had a little something to do with their continued promotion of it.
So that $50 goes to an employee who colors
No,
his
sorry.
lines?
We don't have any. We don't have any. We gotta give them some kids. We got some people now. I know which colors. I know which colors taste the best.
I want to know why.
I don't read it. All right. Moving on. Ryan highlights a ton of great work happening on the distribution department. The only thing I really want to highlight is the noteworthy items there. You're talking about Maintain X. Maintain X is the platform that we've selected for our computerized maintenance management software. We talked about it a little bit, but they're both, Ryan and Casey, talk about the positives of this program. It's being implemented, it's a living, breathing thing, and it will constantly be evolving and constantly helping us just stay on track and moving at that just under the rev limiter, making sure we keep everything moving along the way it should, make sure we're in compliance. Only other thing I will mention from Ryan's report is some of the additional Eastside Feed satellite projects. The guys have set a lot of poles over there, getting really close to wrapping up the Monroe Street portion of the satellite project. And then as Ryan mentions, the pipe has shown up to, you gotta be careful on Lowell saying that, the conduit for the underground portion going from where we bored under the river up to Front Street. That's all come in, so they'll start digging soon, next week. And that'll complete those two pieces are big pieces, and then we'll reset, regroup, evaluate, those projects and how they track the budget, and then we'll turn the next satellite project loose and just keep advancing things out. Once the contractors are done, we'll start moving people over to 41, or getting them off the 4160 and move them over to the 12470 system. So lots happening there. Generation projects, one thing I want to highlight that I try to pause from time to time and appreciate some of the significant but small things that we do. I've been known to say, a lot of greatness doesn't come from one 10,000 hour project, it comes from 10,000 1-hour projects. Reliability, so there's a lot of less than stellar, less than exciting things that really combine to make us a great utility. And one of the things that I think is a tremendous improvement is, and it's minor, is how we get rid of our old IT equipment. never effectively recycled, even one, recycled probably. I can't necessarily speak to it because I think multiple years of junk was piled into the IT rooms, and I didn't know what to do with it. But we looked at, working with IP consulting, how do we recycle things? How do we appropriately destroy stuff so that it can't be exploited to take advantage of us? You find an old computer of ours, if hackers are smart, there's information there, there's stored whatever. So Casey drove a whole truckload, whole carload of stuff out to CompuServe, Comprenew, that's what it is. Comprenew.
Is that in Grand Rapids?
Yes, Grand Rapids based company, but they recycle, we get certificates of destruction. They really do a good job. The city police department actually recommended them. So Casey worked with the police department. So it's just a good example of us working between Light and Power, the city, the police department, and doing something. Nobody's gonna, write a press release and say, hey, we recycled stuff. But it's important to recycle and important to destroy and dispose of very critical equipment appropriately. And it's something that just a small thing, but I think it highlights a lot of, it's indicative of a lot of the small things that we do that really round out and smooth out the corners and make us a great utility as a whole.
Did that cost us to drop
Yes.
that off? Okay. So was it per pound or,
Casey,
I don't,
It depends on the device, whether it's per pound or if it's like per device.
wow.
Yeah, it's
So-
interesting. I learned a bunch of new
It
stuff.
depends, yeah, and sometimes at the fairground that recycle your item, like we've had sometimes they bring a truck
Yeah.
and you can do the same thing right here in Lowell.
Yeah, the community cleanup
Cleanup
day, a lot of,
Yeah.
we've been talking, the city's
Wow.
interested parties have been talking about the community cleanup day. And that's one of the things that kind of, you can make sure you can get them there, because there's not a whole lot of players in the electronics recycling game that are
There is
local.
that, there is
So.
that. And are they sincerely trying to recycle them and do what's best for the environment?
Yes.
Comp, renew.
Yes.
It would-
There's
Okay.
that and data security.
Data security is a
Wiping
big
it off,
component of
clean
it.
it up.
It's a, yeah, because we,
Okay.
Yes.
so we get certificates of destruction that certify that it basically ships a legal liability to them.
Correct.
Where if they were to, it's a formal process. It's not, hey, I throw your trash in the garbage and hand you a piece of
No, not at
paper
all.
that says I threw your
Yeah.
trash away. It's a regimented and structured process that has to meet certain standards for appropriately destroying and wiping, cleaning that data. And I think most of the time, it's pretty much shredded. It's hard to put a hard drive back together when it's in 1,000 pieces.
Right.
It's actually a national certification.
Is that what it
They
is?
have, Yep.
Balance on. But yeah, I wanted to just highlight that. Again, it's something, I try to appreciate some of the small things and the incremental steps, because a lot of incremental steps you don't notice in the moment, but if you look back a year and look at where we were into where we are now, we always want to see that improvement, and a lot of that comes from smaller things. Safety update, the crews and all participated in a joint training with Portland and Mecca to do pole top rescue and bucket truck rescue. I heard nothing but good things. I was not able to attend that, but we're kind of easing into and getting familiar with the partnership with Mecca and Portland.
So that was done here?
Yes, done
So-
right back.
So that's what the poles are, behind the poles?
Yeah, the training poles, yeah.
Yep.
Also wanted to highlight in something that I've not touched on much, but it's how are we meeting training requirements throughout the rest of the company. And the office has recently started utilizing a training platform through a company called Mineral, and we have free access to this Mineral platform because of our insurance broker. There's a deal that BHS worked out with Mineral, but it's some really effective training. So the office is scheduling online trainings and I think following up with some discussions. And there's also some other things. We've done some fire drills, and working on tornado drills. So there's more to safety training than just doing these online trainings, but it's really been a beneficial platform. The operations crews recently used it for ladder safety and a lockout tagout training. So it's an opportunity to supplement some of their trainings as well, especially to knock out some of the required trainings that we have to do on an annual basis. And the quality is there. Ryan was shaking his head.
Yeah. Definitely.
I've done quite a few of them, but wanted to highlight not just, safety doesn't just impact the crews, Ryan, Casey, Tom, it impacts the whole company, and we have a safety focus throughout the company, not just in the outside crews that have the jobs that you typically think of as the more dangerous jobs. But unfortunately, earlier this year, even in an office, Julie and I talked about it, there was actually a Michigan worker death, somebody fell down the stairs. It can happen anywhere. People falling from relatively short heights, 10 foot, things like that. We tend not to, the crews tend to be the only ones getting 10 feet in the air, but everybody walks up and down the stairs. I've fallen down the stairs, I've fallen up the stairs. Somebody else in the room's fallen up the stairs too. But, it's good to keep in mind and keep it in the back of our head, or keep in the front of our head, really, that safety has to touch on every position, every job classification. It's important from the top down, and it's not just important at work, it's important in personal life. It's something that really has to encompass everything that we do. Moving forward, kind of disappointing news coming out of the 40101D, the state administered resiliency grants. Those appear to be delayed. The state had indicated that they're hopeful that the application would be out by the end of June with a mid-July deadline. We still don't have an application. We're still hopeful, but we're hopeful. We'll leave it at that. RP3 application, I know, I'll start with customer survey. I was going to go into a little bit of a review, but I don't want to spoil the surprise too much when we have full results. We have 141-ish responses. I wrote this last Friday, so as of last Friday, we had 141 responses, overwhelmingly positive, and I definitely look forward to sharing the final results with the board, but we are monitoring those kind of weekly, and that survey will be open for another 2 weeks. It closes the end of August, so any customer in the room that would like to participate in the survey is welcome to participate. It is open to all customers.
So have we handed our 100 trees? Have we, because they are our customers, have we handed them a survey?
So we don't interact with those personally. They do all that online. But we are, I will say, one of the things that we have done for this program that I think is pretty unique based on the company that's administering it is we ask for a paper copy. And normally the data scrubbing process, they look at, they eliminate any duplicate submission from the same IP address. We actually set up a separate site that's only available to us that we're taking these paper submitted surveys and actually inputting the data into the computer. So we're trying to make sure that we do provide the opportunity on paper. It's not what you're asking, but I do think it was interesting. In your mind, you're thinking, if you hand them a survey.
I'm shaking my head because, again, I'm a different generation, and the assumption is everybody has a computer, everybody has the internet, and that's not the case.
And we've made it was a priority of us to make it available to everyone. Because we have customers that choose to come into the office to pay their bill every month. They tend to be older groups, and if they're choosing to come in and interact with a person, they may or may not want to deal with a computer. They may,
All right,
so yes,
Yeah.
Board members participate in the survey?
if you're a customer of Low Light and Power, you are welcome to it. Are you a paying customer?
and you have,
Yeah, I haven't transferred the account out of my mother's name, so gonna have to bring mom down. Have her fill out the paper one because
You swing by the office, we'll even
Right,
let
hand
you
it to you.
deliver a paper one. But other than that, RP3 application is moving along well. We had our last full group meeting. So to give the board kind of an idea of how we tackled the application process, it's been very involved by a lot of people. Myself, Julie, Megan, Ryan, Casey, and Lisa have about every 2 to 3 weeks scheduled a 2-hour block to go review the questions, review previous submissions, assign tasks out, develop things that need to be developed, I track down things. So that process, we had our last, what I hope is our last full group meeting. We've identified the last remaining tasks, which there are not a whole lot of. Some of them are larger than others, but we've established deadlines for each individual task that will have the application process done by the end of this month, and then we're giving ourselves about 2 weeks to do final review and pull together any missing pieces. And the plan is to submit the application well in advance of the September 30th deadline. So we're actually targeting somewhere in that first 2 weeks of September getting it submitted. But I feel very good about how the application's turning out, the quality of work that everybody is pulling together. It's really been a team effort, which was one of my priorities, is to use the process to grow, not just to get an award, but to identify areas of improvement and to collaborate as a group, especially our leadership team group is got a lot of great ideas, and I think we're better than the sum of our parts. I think as a whole organization, we're greater than the sum of our parts. But the RP3 process has been a really positive one. Been a lot of work. Been very time consuming, very labor intensive process, but it's been well worth it, and it's worth the time to pull the whole team together to do a lot of the review. And now we're kind of working independently to wrap things up, but it's been a collection of independent and group think effort. So other than that, I attended the Mission Energy Providers Conference last month on Mackinac Island. I really like this conference because it's attended by all Michigan energy providers, or it's open to all energy providers. So you get consumers, DTE, UPCO, Cherryland, the co-ops, the IOUs, and one of the things that I think is really interesting is the opportunity to hear from the MPSC. MPSC Chair Dan Scripps is always there. He's very, there's always very lively conversations especially with the transition in the energy industry, but it was a really good conference. Valuation study I wanted to highlight. We're partnering with UFS and MMEA to do, Craig, you heard about this, I don't remember where it was, but you turned around and went, we're doing that, right? I think it might have been an MMEA fall conference, or the MMEA Fred Meyer Gardens. But what UFS is doing is kind of looking at the multi-value stream contributions we make to the community, and what do we actually bring to the community. It's, everybody knows about pilot. We can quantify the value of the pilot that we pay to the city. But other than that, it looks at reliability. You can put a dollar amount on reliability. Obviously put a dollar amount of money left in customers' hands, comparing our rates to competitors' rates, our contributions from a benevolence perspective. So we're going to take everything and look at all the different areas that White power represents value to our owners, the customers that we serve, and try to quantify that. I think it's interesting, there are 19, for one, we're gonna get a $1,000 break on it. MMEA has grant funds that they were able to secure that are really open to how we use them. So MMEA is gonna provide a $1,000 contribution towards any utility that wants to do this, and the thought behind it, and something that I pushed for, is trying to get enough participants to extrapolate the data out and try to draw some statewide conclusions. What's the value of public power in Michigan? I love the idea of knowing the value of public power in Lowell, but even greater, what's our contribution to the greater state? We'll see if 19 of 40 give us enough data to really derive anything with any statistical significance or statistical confidence, but I think I'm looking forward to the final product, and I look forward to presenting that data to the board. Annual audit. Megan and Julie are neck deep, maybe nose deep, in audit preparations. The auditors are going to be in town the week of August 28th, last week of August. I can't highlight it enough. I'm getting ahead of the curve a little bit, but every year Peter praises
Oh, yes, he
the
does.
staff and really Julie and Megan and how much prep work they do. I always get a kick out of it because they'll always ask for something, and the answer is usually, "Oh, it's in that package of stuff, information we sent you. You let me help you find it." Or they compile and send so much stuff and are so prepared and ready to go.
And they know where it's at.
They do a great
They
job.
don't bury them.
They-
They know where it's at.
They really do a great job. So I fully expect that things will go smooth. I want to highlight that Perry and I went to the Zealand board meeting last Tuesday. It was really interesting to see. I don't know if you have any comments or any takeaways from it, but they welcomed us and they really appreciated us being there.
And I'm like, I think I wanted to go, and for some reason I don't know.
So, anyway, it was interesting. They do a few things that I think probably speed the process along.
Really?
Yeah, like, for instance, when Charlie when somebody there makes a presentation of that the board needs to vote on, a board member just goes, "So moved," and the one says second. So it's minuscule, but they're not repeating the whole language of it. The person does whoever's doing the presenting, and a board member will go, "So moved," and somebody will go second, and then they vote, and it does rapidly speed things along. They did one thing that I think I'd like to incorporate into our agenda, is they have what they call a safety minute. And it's titled in their safety minute, and they just bring up one little thing about safety. And it's not necessarily just about line workers or whatever. This was, their presentation was sleep deprivation. And they had statistics that they threw out that were mind-blowing of what sleep deprivation does in the whole thing of safety. So I think, again, we gathered that. I think that was a really good thing.
I really like that. And I've been elsewhere where they've done safety minutes, and, I've sat in every TVA meeting, period, whether it was the CEO and his executive team, they did a safety minute. And it's a culture thing. I really like the idea of incorporating them, because, again, I said it earlier, safety's not just about, hey, 9 to 5, I need to be safe, or I'm a liability to my employer. It's, no, you need to be safety conscientious all the time.
And for Andrew, they had some graphs that,
I was gonna say,
had tons of information.
That one graph that I was like,
What? I can't follow that color. But the other is that I thought about, so for instance, like if you get down to supplemental information, our full income statement, performance data chart and stuff. So a lot of things that they present on their, are very, ours are broken down to so many more categories, where they just report more holistic on some numbers and everything, where we're really, you know, we have that holistic view, but if I wanted to ask, well, what's this? Where'd this money, you know, how come this is this? I mean, our, you know, I'm not saying which is better, which is worse, but we do have much more, I thought, much more detail than what they do. But it was a good, their meetings last about 2 hours. They start at 3:30 in the afternoon, and they're done approximately around 5:30. I mean,
I was home I walked in the door at 6:30.
Right. So, I mean, it was a great, they were very appreciative of us, of taking the time to attend. The other is, found it interesting, is, so if you want to speak or attend their meeting, you have to call in advance, and call in what your question or what your.
They want you to fill out a questionnaire, basically register as a guest. And I did get the opportunity, they said, hey, if you can, when you get here, do that, because they can't restrict, I would say they can't restrict access from the public, but it's structured in a pretty neat way. I went online and basically notified Zealand that filled out Perry's information, filled out my information, so they have a record of who's coming, and after the fact, they have a record of who's there. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Did they make you show ID or anything?
I
didn't know if it was
I had
the
my
same
shirt,
thing.
my Lowell and color shirt on.
Did you?
I know Bob, I know a couple of people
Okay.
there, so, yeah.
So that was, and they actually had their meetings in there. So what was interesting, I'm just quick, is their board is the board of electric and water.
Yes,
And
I know.
two of their customers make up 60% of their water usage. 2 customers. One was
2.5 million gallons a day.
a day.
That's more than our entire city
Is that
system can
Frankfurt or
produce.
Frankfurt?
No, one was consumers,
It's a gas generation.
Gas
plant.
generation.
gas generation
Steam.
plant, and then the other was
Baby food.
baby food, right?
Baby formula, I believe.
Baby
They were
formula, and
weekly phone calls with the White House.
remember when the
Yeah.
shortage and everything? But it was really, that aspect, it was really interesting, because again, it's, that board takes care of both electric and water. So again, when you're looking at that meeting, they're also not only dealing with electric, they're dealing with water at the same time.
Lowell Light and Power used to be the board of water and light.
Yeah, it was on the bill. Barry actually mentioned it, so we got a bill, not sure when we got rid of the water system, but that's still our building.
But anyway, it was a neat experience, and I would even look forward to going to another local municipality that has their electric.
It was definitely beneficial. It was a good use of time. The last 2 things I have, company picnic this Saturday. Anybody that's gonna be able to make it, it's not at
Not
a pavilion. It's not the pavilion, the big pavilion that's on the main road. You take covered bridge, and it's up by the ball field there, kind of up on the hill. Head towards,
It's where the moose always had their picnics.
What?
Went to
The
several
moose
of those
always
when I was a
had,
little
they
kid.
used to always, as little kids, they always, our family was not a moose member, but our next door neighbors Curtis's, and I always went with the Curtis's to the moose picnic. It was a lot of fun for a kid.
Well, yeah, and go down to the creek and catch crawfish and, yeah.
Other than that, just want to highlight the anniversaries. Casey, thank you, 5 years.
Years.
Or are you 6? You're looking at it like it might be 6.
No, fine, that's.
Oh, I started questioning, did I forget to update the year? Did I look at the wrong thing?
I forgot about it.
Yeah, Casey, 5 years. Megan and Nancy celebrated their 9th anniversary. I'd like to highlight those. We have a great team, as we've discussed, and it's commitments like that that make us great. So that's all I have.
Scheduled meetings, next meeting is September 12th?
Yes, September 12th.
Yep, September 12th. There's nothing that you want to supplement?
No,
That's
that information is just stuff that you don't plan on. It's at the end of the board pack, we've always had the list of
Yep.
payables, but it's never been on the agenda. And as we added more kind of stuff at the end, if the board ever wants to go over anything there, I'm happy to go over it. Again, that's where that table for the performance data just got moved. There's sometimes that there's value in that, so we moved that down to supplemental information, and then the full incomes, the detailed income statements down there, and then the payables stay there. So the plan, again, welcome any feedback on structure or anything, but I thought we'd just kind of push those to the end, and as the board sees a need to review those or to bring those to the conversation, please do so.
Board comment? Andrew?
I guess the one comment I had was that in discussion we had earlier, I thought it was interesting that we could not figure out who to credit for letting power being so good. Right, so it was interesting, so I was like, well, I think we have to, the board is so good at this, well, we have a great manager, now the staff's so good. It's like, well, I finally kind of realized it's everybody, right? But I just thought it was neat to see, yes, that everyone's to blame for our success, so. Yeah, and I think we need to continue that. I mean, it's great that I think everyone is valued enough for that to be possible. So that's my comment for today.
Tina?
I just have two things. The lineman program for the high school, is that still an opportunity, or wasn't there one? Remember when we go to Expo and there was like a summer program for a high school kid or somebody get involved or whatever for a future career in light and power, anything like that?
I'm not familiar, but I can say what we regularly, probably 2-3 times a year, we'll have somebody reach out and say, hey, can I do a job shadowing day? And
Okay,
the
so
answer's
job
almost,
shadowing.
yeah, the answer's almost always yes. I
Okay.
can't think of any of them that we've turned down, and they've been pretty diverse group of
Okay.
people, but we do that semi-regularly, but it's not part of a program. It's just something that if people have interest, we're happy to participate and happy to support the industry as a whole.
Okay, I didn't know if that had evolved into a program or what have you, because I thought we had something there at Expo at one time that we were kind of talking about it.
At one point, I know Sharon was talking with before COVID, was talking with the high schools, I think it was I don't remember, I don't know any details because COVID
Okay.
killed it all, and it hasn't been resurrected, and we've not had anybody reach out to us since, but,
Well, just,
Yeah.
I'd just like to, circle back on, because I always thought that was a big idea that we could get these kids interested in going into this area. I would have never went into insurance in my life because I was always in art class. I always thought I was creative, and marketing was a perfect landscape for me because I hit the ground running and I go into more things. So it's just a fit, for some kids. They may not. I want them to discover what you guys do here and if there's an opportunity here too. The other thing is, besides the squirrel has been corrected statement, that was fabulous. The the Ford battery plant that's happening, are you guys gonna that is such a huge, cool project. And I've sent them a couple emails asking them dumb questions, and they answered me right back, you know. And I thought, that'd be a cool, you know, like, fun trip to go down there. They're just clearing the landscape, that's where they're at. They just answered dumb questions that I had, so.
This is not a direct answer to that, but there is a lot of, we've not reached out to anybody, but there's a lot of movement in Michigan battery development. Lansing, speaking just of our municipal
Yeah.
partners, Lansing has a huge expansion due to EVs, through GM. The one that's really interesting is in Holland. The LG plant in Holland is looking to upgrade the equivalent of about 5 to 6 times our entire system under one roof, and it's all for battery technology development. So I've thought about, luckily, we know some people at Holland. So I've thought about reaching out when it's done to see, can we gain insight into some of this? Because you know, you're seeing some of those bigger investments, these, you know, the news-making investments.
Absolutely.
But there tends to be, you know, those are, you know, first or second tier suppliers. There tends to be third, fourth tier suppliers
Right.
that, you know, concentric circles out. And we're heavily, in Lowell even heavily involved in auto manufacturing, whether, or the automotive industry, whether it's Metric or Envision Engineering does stuff for Indian Motorcycles and Polaris. And so if there's any opportunity to gain insight, I will
It's
always
very
love that.
exciting, it is. And to circle back, I don't want you to think, Perry, that I feel that this board is just on cruise control. But we don't do their job, and we don't know how to do their job, and how they pull it off. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm in awe, because I work under a board at the Blues, and there's been many times where a decision's come down, and us, the workers, have said, are you serious? What do you guys do for a living? There's times that we wonder, why are you making this decision? Whereas we're lucky as a board that we have direct contact of very smart people that keep their ear and their eyes open and say, this is really cool, this is what's happening over there. Why can't we bring this to us? And the board, yes, turns around and says, oh my God, that's a cool idea. Thank you for bringing it to us, because I have no idea what you guys need. That's my point. That's it.
Tim?
I will not be here next month. I'll be in Wisconsin visiting family, and I'm actually going to be looking for, not that I'm dying, but a burial plot, because I want to be buried in the town I grew up in, Columbus, Wisconsin. So that's something, so Lenny and I are going to take also, but I also won't be here for the 16th either. I'll be gone that whole weekend. And I think, I don't know if Marshall got enough signatures yet to put it on the ballot of whether they can vote on whether they're gonna be able to put that battery plant. I'm not sure where they're at with the signatures, if that all got approved or not.
That one's a tough, yeah, that's a Goshen plant, right? Yeah,
Right.
that has, what,
For Ford, yeah.
CCP money attached to it.
Yeah, so hopefully it goes through, but we'll see. Other than that, that's it.
You know, a little cremation, you can have your ashes here.
Yeah, we
you
do
can
have a
your
plot
ashes-
here too. Let me
ashes
show you
there,
that one for the
ashes-
family here.
Well, you can donate that then.
Well, we already donated one of them to an aunt that passed away,
Did you?
so she could be buried next to her mom and dad.
And
So we already did that, so we got,
You only need one.
then I think you need some ashes out on a few golf courses that you
There you
have.
go.
you know, that's against the law, Perry. You might not be saying it.
Is it really?
Yes, it is, you're not to spread your ashes throughout.
Oh,
So nobody ever does that.
Well,
No, nobody ever does that.
Nobody ever does
If somebody had a hole in their pocket and put it down there, I wouldn't okay with that, I wouldn't say nothing. My mom's got some of her ashes at, the old Milwaukee County Stadium.
Oh.
Yeah, because she was a big,
Oh, really?
Great.
that's it.
Casey, congratulations on 5 years. You're a great part of this team, and thanks. Thanks to Ryan and Casey for getting the maintenance system up and running. And Julie, thank you for, answering all of the challenges that Charlie puts on you. You do a great job of coming through, so.
Thank you for not going away.
Yeah, and leading the team in the front office.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess that's it.
Okay. In the mail today
I'm sorry, I haven't read that one.
was Public Power magazine. Are you guys getting this?
Yes,
I was saying, does every board member get,
yes.
you don't get it?
So we'll make sure that you do.
I'm not sure how to actually go about getting on the list, but I'll figure it out. I bet it's fairly easy.
Yeah, I bet there's a
I was
nest in the.
Remind
So,
Sandra.
I quickly leafed through this, this afternoon. And I think, I really, in the last few publications, I'm really seeing things in the Public Power magazine that applies to everybody in the utilities, even the small groups such as ourselves. It's not just about the Lansings or the Nashvilles or the Smuds. But there's some really good reading or good points in here, and that's like from threats to strengths, when a utility goes private, about the cons and keeping competing for talent, preventing sellout, and basically there's just a lot of great articles in it. And it was a lot of them are where Public Power has not failed, but has not done the best job, and maybe that's not just the Public Power, but ourselves, is blowing our own horn, telling you what's the highlights, what's to know and communicate your value, what's your value in the community and everything. And so there's again, kudos to Public Power. I would encourage all the board members to read this. I'd encourage all of our people to read it, because I think it says a lot of things of what you're talking about, Tina, about our workforce and everything else. So I've already talked about the Zealand, and that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much it. I would, again, our next board meeting, September 12th, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So, are you gonna say so moved? Or
Well, I was gonna be a little more creative.
what was your? Okay, go ahead.
But I guess it's funny, because Carrie mentioned that as a way to shorten the meeting and stuff, but I was gonna say, move to adjourn at 25 minutes longer than the Zealand meeting.
And do we have support? All those in favor signify by saying yes. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? If you're opposed, you can stay here.